Hello and welcome to the SRNA Ask the Expert podcast series, Community Spotlight Edition. For this episode, we were pleased to be joined by Paula Jones. Paula is a filmmaker who was diagnosed with transverse myelitis in 2010. You can view her full bio in the podcast description. My name is Krissy Dilger, and I moderated this podcast. SRNA is a nonprofit focused on support, education, and research of rare neuroimmune disorders. You can learn more about us on our website at wearesrna.org. Ask the Expert is sponsored in part by Amgen, Alexion AstraZeneca Rare Disease, and UCB. Thank you for joining me today, Paula. Would you mind beginning by introducing yourself?
My name is Paula Jones. I'm from New Zealand. What else do you want to know? I'm old. I'm tired. I have three grown children. One of whom's passed away, but he's still. But yeah, and one grandson.
Awesome.
And what else do you want to know?
Yeah, if you don't mind, just share a little bit about your background, where are you from, your profession, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm a filmmaker. I've been in the industry for 25 years. Yeah, writer, director, going to lean into producing. Have had an idiopathic transverse myelitis for the last 14 years. So that's put me in a wheelchair. I can walk a little bit, but not much. It's easier in the chair. And yeah, from New Zealand. That's
awesome.
Not too much. It's just like, yeah.
Well, thank you for your willingness to share your story. I know that our listeners can probably relate, but do you mind just sharing a little bit about your diagnosis story? How did your symptom onset kind of manifest and your journey to diagnosis?
Well, so it was 2010, and I was working very hard. I was doing two jobs. I was contracting, directing a doco, so doing my own research. I was driving a lot and a lot of time spent on the road. It sort of presented itself a couple of days beforehand, but for some reason I just was really, really tired, like ridiculously tired. So I was doing some research, and I asked the lady who I was researching whether I could have a sleep, as you do. And she said, yep, go and have a sleep in the room. When I woke up, I went to get off the bed and my legs weren't there. And I just fell on the floor. So I just sort of thought, slept funny or whatever, because it was the middle of the afternoon. They came back and I continued on with my journey of working. And then a couple of days later, when I was coming back, I just had a really sore back, and I was driving back it would have been a 3.5-hour drive back to pick up my daughter, who was 11 at the time, in Hawke's Bay. And just the pain was getting worse and worse, and I had a hot bath, and it just felt like knives in my back. I was doing exercises, taking Nurofen, like it was hours, just a matter of hours, and jumped in a hot bath, and I began to get really weak in my legs, and I had to call my daughter to come and help me out of the bath, and that's when I felt my legs go. That I actually felt them disappear. The pain was excruciating, and they couldn't. I was at that time at her grandparents, her father's parents, and they couldn't touch me. I didn't like it was too painful, and so they called an ambulance and took me to hospital. And it was, they had no idea that I was in the neurological ward with the dementia patients, and I think the diagnosis took about maybe a week to 2 weeks, can't remember offhand, but it was a long time anyway. And by the time they diagnosed me, they sent me down to the spinal unit, and that was in Christchurch Hospital, which was down the South Island, and they did a plasmapheresis. Did they do it there? Yeah, plasmapheresis in the hospital. But yeah, didn't really do anything, I don't think. And then spinal unit for 5 months, where they also didn't know what to do with me. So I just kind of was pretty much put in the too hard basket, I think. They didn't really know. So I started researching, and I sort of dug around and found this community 15 years ago. Found out a third, that a third get better, a third don't, and a third have partial recovery. And I was like, no, I'm going to fully recover. And it took me a while. I still do think that I will get my mobility back. But that was it. Everything. And then my world came crashing down, big time.
Big change, yeah, for sure. I think that a lot of people can relate to your story, unfortunately. So what was life like post-diagnosis? You said you had those 5 months in the spinal unit.
Yeah.
But how did you move forward from that and kind of adjust to your new life?
I'm still adjusting 15 years on. I think the funny thing is that you don't ever, you have your, I definitely have my down days where I just sort of take myself away from everybody and sort of recharge. I think it also might be my age, our generation. We sort of don't like to, so I'm in my 50s, and we don't like to share when we're feeling like rubbish, and we just deal with it. That's just how it's always been. But no, I was angry, really angry for a lot of years. And of course, when I tried to get back into my job, no one was going to employ me. So I, even the disability community, which I thought I must be a shoo-in because I'm a director. I've been a director for 10 years before this happened. So, but no, I couldn't even get a job, on the disability show. Which kind of, that sucked. And it just went from sort of bad to worse, really. And so I just decided, well, if no one's going to employ me, then I'll have to do my own stuff. I'll have to employ myself. And so that began my sort of journey into doing my own thing.
Yeah.
But awesome. Which was in about 2014, I think. I decided, okay, 2014, 2015, I started my own company with some friends. Yeah, that was it. And it wasn't easy at all. Like, it wasn't just, everybody wants disabled. Because the other thing is I've never thought of myself as, I hate the word disabled. I hate it. And I hate the word invalid. And I hate all of those words, because I just do things differently now. And I'm definitely not an invalid. Like, when of course, I don't have a family that could financially support me. I am the financial support for the family. So that really affected me too. And a lot of people kind of forget about that. If you don't have a family that can financially support you, it's triply difficult. And if you have children, because I was a single mum. So there's all those other things that you have to deal with, as well as the bills still keep coming. And now because people think that you're just in a chair, but you're not. I have neuropathic pain. And so I've been in pain for 14 years. Like, it doesn't go away. It's nerve pain. And I have to catheter. So everything, a self-catheter, intermittent cathetering, which is, it's better than having a bag. So I count my blessings. But the thing is, it's access to spaces and toilets. I hate public toilets, you know, and I get really angry at people that use the disabled toilets in public because they make a mess, and you know, so you take 5 hours because you have to clean it before. Just all of those things that people don't get. It's just like, oh, you're in a wheelchair. Well, no, it's actually a whole bunch of other stuff that we have to deal with. You know, before we even go out for the day, you have to think about all these things. Make sure you got your catheters. Make sure, you know, all the other things that could go wrong, might go wrong, could go wrong. You have to sort of prepare for. But yeah, I guess it kind of it makes us stronger people, because I think it was after my son passed away in 2012. I just like, oh, that's pretty much the worst thing that can happen to me. So you become a little bit fearless. But I think I've become more angry too. So, because I made a doco in 2012. He passed away in 2013. Made a doco in 2012. And I watched it and I was horrible. I was horrible about myself, about, you know, the day my legs stopped working. And I was just horrible because all I wanted was a cure and to be able to walk again. And so that, you know, just a different person.
Yeah. No, I think that's very understandable, and you have to almost reinvent your life. No one expects that.
Well, you do, because they pretty much decided that I couldn't do what I do. You know, there's nobody doing it. There's nobody in a chair writing and directing for mainstream. Because after that whole that I didn't get the job on the disability show, I'm like, I'm never gonna. I hold grudges. I'm never gonna do that. Like, I'm not gonna do anything. You know, I'm not going to work for the disability community just because of that one thing that happened when I was at my lowest. But what I decided to do was bring people into mainstream, like, you know, the disability community into mainstream, because I think, you know, although it's great that we have a separation, it's also not great because it's a separation. Like, I want to be able to exist in mainstream, and I think mainstream should set up for me, not them cut me off and I have to go over here and you know, work within these parameters. I'm like, no, you put a ramp there so I can participate. You can't talk about diversity and all of that, you know, those kinds of things, and not give us a seat at the not even give us a seat at the table, but not even, there's no ramp to get in, to get to the table. You know, like I've pointed this out to a lot of our organizations here. And they do, you know, to their credit, they've done stuff about it, but it's just, again, they just don't think. Like, yeah, I'm less angry now. I'm more like a persuasive. Yeah,
that's good. So that leads me kind of to what we are partially here to talk about, which is your show, Spinal Destination. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came to be and what the show is about?
Yeah, well, while I was in the hospital, because I thought that I was just going to get better. I'm a documentary maker before, and so I thought, oh, I've never been in hospital, never been in this situation. I'm just going to write everything down. So I did, but the writings, you know, the longer I was in there, the writing became more personal about how I was feeling, and I never really intended it to go anywhere. It was just something for myself. But I read it, I think, you know, a few years after I'd written it down, and it was funny. Like, because I wrote what I saw basically and how I was feeling, and I'm like, oh, this could be a play. You know, it could be a play, and then it could be this, and it could be a book, and then you know, the more I sort of got into drama, because I switched from documentary to drama. This could be a series, and it could be funny. But do you think I could convince people that a spinal unit could be a space for a comedy. They just could not see it. So I managed to get some funding to get people to write. We all got together and wrote, and I did a proposal. And yep, no, they still couldn't see it. But then I did another comedy, and then somebody asked me if I had, a network asked me if I had anything else, and I said, well, I've got this, and they really liked it, so they supported it. Yeah, so that was it's like a 10-year journey, that one. I think the interesting thing is that the world of the spinal unit, the rules of the land are completely different. So it was really hard for people who have not been in hospital for a long period of time or have not sort of suffered any debility. And I know that sounds terrible, that they couldn't understand how the nuances of the spinal unit, like bowel accidents and nudity and stuff. It became not a thing. It was a thing for me because I was like fighting the machine the whole way through. But for people that sort of like, oh, this is it, especially people with complete spinal injuries, that they're not gonna, they think that they're not going to get better, so they resign themselves to just doing the physio and getting better or as good as they can get. So they don't care, rolling around with their catheter strapped to their leg and stuff. But I was always trying to cover everything up but after I sort of got in there and was in there for a few weeks, I'm like, I didn't notice that stuff. And so the rules of the land are different, the rules of the world. And so when people were sort of helping me write the series, it's like, well, no, that wouldn't happen. And no, I'm not going to laugh at that. I'm laughing with him, or we make a joke at somebody who's walking, So there was all of that to deal with. But just I think people's fear as well of doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing. And I'm like, well, like I said, the rules of the land are different. Within the spinal unit, everything like normal world out there those rules don't exist in here, because you've got people taking you 24/7. You have your dinner time, you have your meals to eat, all of that stuff. It's not real. So you sort of create your own fun, and so that's what we kind of did. And I'm hoping you guys get to see it. I hope someone buys it over there.
Yeah. I got to see the preview, and for our listeners, we'll link the preview in the comments, or in the description. But yeah, it seems like such a funny and well-rounded show, and relatable to our community, but even outside of the rare neuroimmune community.
You feel pretty powerless. And so I had this the character of the walking me, so there's Tessa and there's walking Tessa. And so, there are things, like I said, in the world of the spinal unit, when people talk to you and when you're expected to do certain things, and you've just come from, I was a documentary director. I'd been traveling all over the place and making, you couldn't sort of keep me down, and being a director, you are the boss, right? And so I'm all of a sudden in this space where no one gives a rat's ass what I did before. And we're all, a lot of the time I felt like we were spoken to like we were children, and we had no agency over ourselves. And of course our bodies don't work. So I had this in my head, I'd be like, I'd so want to punch you in the face, or just, and so I'm like, how can I do that where people get it? And I thought, okay, well, you always, when we're in the spinal unit, you always sort of think back to what it was like when you're walking and what you would do if somebody spoke to you in this way or expected you to do these things. And so that's her. That's what she's like. She's like your biggest cheerleader, but then your biggest critic as well, is yourself, right? And rather than just have the voice in your head, she's there causing mayhem and, making you second guess everything that you think or say or do. But yeah, and that's pretty much when you're in, or my experience of being in the spinal unit, you're alone with yourself a lot. You're in your own head a lot because you can't move, and everything is exhausting, everything.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is, it's based on my experiences, and I had to sort of bring up the spinal unit people and say, this is completely you guys did a great job. It's not about and that's the other thing that's different about it. It's not about the doctors or the nurses. It's about us and our, there's 4 of us. And because there wasn't any other women in the spinal unit, there was just me and a couple of older women that had to have hip replacements. So I was it. There's no one for me to talk to about, periods and all the other stuff that you have to deal with, as well as not being able to walk, and all your joints and that get all sore, and everything is just everything's turned on its head.
Yeah. So how can people watch your show if they're interested?
The Americans have to buy it. It's Hattrick International are the distribution. That's other distributors, and they're in England. SBS in Australia have bought it. So I don't know, to be honest. I will ask them how it's going over in the States, but the problem, of course, is there's a million bazillion things to buy, isn't there? So you might get on one of your channels over there. I don't know, but we're hoping to do a series 2 that involves our family members, and of course, when they come into the spinal unit as well, it's a completely different world for them, and so it's the world as well as the person has changed. And I think one of the things that used to infuriate me is people saying you're still the same person, and I'm like, I am so not the same person. I'm never going to be the same person. But I fought a lot, which I don't know whether that helped me or hindered me, but so you still feel it's still a fight. Like it's not only being in the wheelchair, it's also being a woman, being older, all the things. Just load them all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to ask people, what are you looking forward to in general?
What am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to things not being such a fight to get. I don't think it's ever going to happen because, the decision makers still are not us. The people that actually make the decisions to get things funded is not us. So it's fighting to be relevant and seen, I think. But I guess I was going to say baby steps, but we'll be taking baby steps forever. But what am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to like the space in Spinal Destination. So my crew I've been working with for years, but I made them all just roll around in wheelchairs, like before we even started shooting. So they could get a feel of it's just things like doors, like and lips and so they had a new appreciation of I'm looking forward to the time when people don't have to think, it's just automatic. Move everything out of the way, make this, like we make everything easier for people walking. Like you can walk in and clap your hands and the lights go on. So why don't you just go that little bit further and make everything low, a little bit, just think about just think about, making sure that we actually have access to the world. That's what I'm looking forward to. I don't know that it's going to happen in my lifetime, but I think, I don't know whether it's getting better. I really don't. I guess it is. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
don't know. Be keen to see what other people think.
Yeah.
It's getting better.
Yeah. And I guess this is might be related, but is there anything you'd like other people out in the world to know about having a TM or just in general a rare diagnosis?
Um, well, I mean, everyone in a wheelchair knows that it's visible. So people automatically assume things. Like, no one ever assumes that I'm the boss of anything. They always assume that I'm in the office. Nothing wrong with being in the office, but no one ever, when I come into a room with people, no one ever assumes that this is my project. And that's infuriating, So just because we're in chairs or and I can't talk to invisible disabilities because I have a very visible one. Just because we're in chairs, don't assume that we aren't, I don't know, movers and shakers and leaders or whatever. It is there's not one instance when I've gone into a space and it's been around my projects. There's not one instance that someone says, "Oh, so this is your project." Not one. It's always like the person standing next to me, usually the man. And yeah, not one instance has anybody said this is yours. Even Spinal Destination, even the one with it's based on me and the spinal unit, can't possibly be can't possibly be us that's doing it. And I do want to see more people moving into mainstream. I really do. I've made another one, Testify, which I was a part of, but I wrote a girl in a wheelchair who's a party, she's a partier. She's actually one of the main characters. And, she owns the flat. She parties with the other girls. She drives. We don't see people in wheelchairs on screen driving. So it's just that. And it's just normalizing us and what we do. Just because we do everything sitting down. It's so that's what I want to see. That's what I'm looking forward to, is people just not having to think about giving us access to the world.
Yeah.
It's just a given.
Yeah. Well, I am very happy that you were able to join me today. That's all the questions that I have.
Thank you so much for having me.
This was a great chat, and I look forward to see Spinal Destinations and also what else is in the pipeline.
Thank you to our Ask the Expert sponsors, Amgen, Alexion AstraZeneca Rare Disease, and UCB. Amgen is focused on the discovery, development, and commercialization of medicines that address critical needs for people impacted by rare, autoimmune, and severe inflammatory diseases. They apply scientific expertise and courage to bring clinically meaningful therapies to patients. Amgen believes science and compassion must work together to transform lives. Alexion AstraZeneca Rare Disease is a global biopharmaceutical company focused on serving patients with severe and rare disorders through the innovation, development, and commercialization of life-transforming therapeutic products. Their goal is to deliver medical breakthroughs where none currently exist, and they are committed to ensuring that patient perspective and community engagement are always at the forefront of their work. UCB innovates and delivers solutions that make real improvements for people living with severe diseases. They partner with and listen to patients, caregivers, and stakeholders across the healthcare system to identify promising innovations that create valuable health solutions.